Shalom, good evening, Israel. I just want to meditate again on the word because to meditate is to remind yourself, right? Because when you're trying to remind yourself, you're repeating something, and once repetition is happening or is occurring, it's more easy to remember, right? And that's what we will do today, or as much as possible, we must do it daily, right? This is the book of Psalms, chapter 1 and verse 2. Or let's start with verse 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Right? We must be delighted in the law, right? Because the law is spiritual, and we have spirits in our mind, in our flesh, right? So we must feed our spirits with the delightment of the law, right? Because that's the word, that is the law, right? Verse 3. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Salaki, let's jump. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 6 and verse 37. Let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord, and meditate continually in his commandments. He shall establish thine heart and give thee wisdom at thine own desire. Right? So, keeping the commandments gives us wisdom, right? And once we always consistently and continuously meditating on the law, right, he will establish our minds, because the heart is the mind, right? So once we establish that, that's the time when the Most High will establish his law upon us, right? So the first 10 commandments, the Levitical laws, the feast days, right, the Sabbaths, so let's continuously meditate on that. And one of the things that we build with that helps us to keep the law is to apply wisdom. That's why he says here that give thee wisdom at thine own heart, right? Because wisdom is the keeping of the commandments, right? Sarah, I believe that's what. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 1 and 26. If thou desire wisdom, keep the commandments, and the Lord shall give her unto thee, right? Because there are laws that you have to apply wisdom, right, in order to avoid them, right? For example, mm, for, for example, there's a law that you must not hate thy brother in thine heart, right? And in order to uh, repent, or in order to keep that law, we must we must directly say to our brothers who we find a fault in, we must say to them in a spirit of meekness, right? That application of applying the spirit of meekness by confronting them is in itself is wisdom, right? So when you apply wisdom, that is the same as keeping the commandments, right? uh, it's wise to it's wise to rest on a day that the Lord declared as day of rest, right? Because we have 7 days, and the last day is the Sabbath, right? It's wise to be refreshed with the word, right? So it's the same thing, wisdom and keeping the commandments, right? Because that's how we should live, right? Because there's a guide in this walk, and that is keeping the commandments, keeping the law. And in order to keep that, we must apply wisdom, right? So it's the same thing, right? So we must continuously meditate on that, because to meditate is to be reminded, right? And through repetition, we are able to remember it, so that in times of temptation, because remember, when you come to serve the Lord, prepare thyself for temptation, right? That's Sirach 2 and 1. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 2 and verse 1. My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. Right? So when we are tempted by the Most High, we need to be always armed with that wisdom or with that knowledge, right? Because to fall in a day of adversity or the day of temptation, it just goes to show that we weren't meditating enough, right? Because to fall in the day of adversity um, is the lack of knowledge, and the biblical strength is increasing in knowledge. Proverbs 25, I believe. So this is the biblical strength. This is the book of Proverbs 24 and verse 5. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. So that's the biblical strength. And we jump to verse 10. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. Therefore, remember this verse, right? So we have to always meditate daily so that we can repetitively remind ourselves so that we may be able to remember what we need to know, because biblical strength is knowledge. And if thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. Or in other words, your knowledge is small, right? Therefore, we must remind ourselves of the knowledge of the law and to apply wisdom as well, right? The differences between knowledge and wisdom and understanding is that I believe knowledge is what you have or what you own or what you acquire, right? So what you acquire or what you know is there is a law. Wisdom comes in when you're applying the law, right? So to put it simply, um, you know that there is a law. You know that there is a God. Therefore, it is wise to fear the Lord, right? It is wise to keep the commandments. It's wise to eat pork, right? It's the same thing. It's simple, right? And you doing it shows that you understand it, right? Understanding is the establishment, or understanding is the result of it. So when you stop eating pork, it just goes to show that you understand the Most High. It just goes to show that you understand the laws of the Lord, laws of the Most High, right? because the sin is the transgression of the law. 1 John 3 and 4, I believe. Whosoever committed sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So when you're eating pork, you are committing sin, right? Leviticus 11 and 7. And the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Of their flesh shall ye not eat, right? Deuteronomy, I think it's 28. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4 and verse 3. Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. These are the beasts. Let's jump to there are many animals that are unclean or are not actually food, right? The Deuteronomy 14 and 8. And the swine, because it divided the hoof, yet cheweth not the cud, it is unclean to you. You shall not eat of their flesh, right? Nor their dead carcass, right? Because it is unclean to you, right? And to not eat pork is to have understanding. And once you have understanding, you have an excellent spirit. And a man, this is the book of Proverbs chapter 17 verse 27. And he that knowledge salaki, or excuse me, he that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit, right? You have a quality spirit, right? Because once you understand that you must not eat pork, you now have an understanding, and to have understanding is to have an excellent spirit, because the Most High dwells in us, right? And the Most High is what? Clean, right? Therefore our spirit is clean, and it is a good quality spirit, or it is an excellent spirit, right? Give me the book of Job 28 and 28. You see, the world eats pork. The world allows you that you can eat pork, right? So to depart from the world, which is evil, to depart from the world shows that you are understanding how the world works, right? This is the book of Job chapter 28 and verse 28. And unto man is said, behold, the fear of the Lord is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding, right? So understanding stands more on, or explains more on, the result, or the action, or the result after the action, right? So knowledge is more of what you know, or what you have, or what you acquire, and the application or the action is the wisdom, and the result after the action is understanding, right? So that's my daily meditation for today. We have to always meditate on the word, right? That we may be reminded, because to be reminded is to repetitively do it, so that it is more easy to remember, so that in the day of temptation we are able to withstand that. Because to combat or to withstand the day of temptation is to have knowledge, and to have knowledge is the same as having or applying wisdom, and that is keeping of the law. And once you kept the law, it just shows that you understand it, right? All praises to the Most High, to Wada all praise to the Most High through Christ.